truly," cried she, "to come when all the mischief's over." She then entered, in such a condition, entirely covered with mud, and in so great a rage, it was with difficulty she could speak. We all expressed our concern, and offered her assistance, except the Captain, who no sooner beheld her than he burst out into a loud laugh. We endeavoured, by our inquiries and condolements, to prevent her attending to him, and she was for some time so wholly engrossed by her anger and her distress, that we succeeded without much trouble. We begged her to inform us how this accident happened. "How?" repeated she, "why, it was all along of your all going away, and there poor Monsieur Du Bois; but it wasn't his fault, for he's as bad off as me." All eyes were then turned to Monsieur Du Bois, whose clothes were in the same miserable plight with those of Madame Duval, and who, wet, shivering, and disconsolate, had crept to the fire. The Captain laughed yet more heartily, while Mrs. Mirvan, ashamed of his rudeness, repeated her inquiries to Madame Duval, who answered, "Why, as we were coming along, all in the rain, Monsieur Du Bois was so obliging, though I'm sure it was an unlucky obligingness for me, as to lift me up in his arms to carry me over a place that was ankle deep in mud; but instead of my being ever the better for it, just as we were in the worst part, I'm sure I wish we had been 50 miles off, for somehow or other his foot slipped, at least I suppose so, though I can't think how it happened, for I'm no such great weight; but however that was, down we both came, together, all in the mud, and the more we tried to get up, the more deeper we got covered with the nastiness, and my new Lyon negligee too, quite spoilt. However, it's well we got up at all, for we might have laid there till now, for aught you all cared. Nobody never came near us." This recital put the Captain into an ecstasy. He went from the lady to the gentleman, and from the gentleman to the lady, to enjoy alternately the sight of their distress. He really shouted with pleasure, and, shaking Monsieur Du Bois strenuously by the hand, wished him joy of having touched English ground; and then he held a candle to Madame Duval, that he might have a more complete view of her disaster, declaring repeatedly that he had never been better pleased in his life. The rage of poor Madame Duval was unspeakable. She dashed the candle out of his hand, stamping upon the floor, and at last spat in his face. This action seemed immediately to calm them both, as the joy of the Captain was converted into resentment, and the wrath of Madame Duval into fear; for he put his hands upon her shoulders, and gave her so violent a shake that she screamed out for help, assuring her, at the same time, that if she had been 1 ounce less old, or less ugly, she should have had it all returned in her own face. Monsieur Du Bois, who had seated himself very quietly at the fire, approached them, and expostulated very warmly with the Captain, but he was neither understood nor regarded, and Madame Duval was not released till she quite sobbed with passion. When they were parted, I entreated her to permit the woman who has charge of the ladies' cloaks to assist in drying her clothes. She consented, and we did what was possible to save her from catching cold. We were obliged to wait in this disagreeable situation near an hour, before a hackney coach could be found, and then we were disposed in the same manner as before our accident. I am going this morning to see poor Madame Duval, and to inquire after her health, which I think must have suffered by her last night's misfortunes, though, indeed, she seems to be naturally strong and hearty. Adieu, my dear Sir, till to-morrow. End of Letter 16.